Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Nazarick, 6th floor. Taylar currently found herself in the arena on the 6th floor of Nazarick. She was going over some of the golems in the stands, picking out which ones she was going to take with her to Karn for her trip that should be happening in just a little while. It wasn't as if she really needed to inspect any of the golems, but she was doing it nonetheless. She didn't want to take any that were damaged with her on her trip, which is why she was looking over the ones she had selected. In truth, she was just killing time until she needed to leave. Every golem in this arena was spotless, and so far they had only seen 4 people in this world who would even be able to do any damage to them. She didn't suspect any would randomly show up in Karn, but she still wanted to make sure all of the golems looked immaculate. Taylar gave all 50 golems she selected another once-over before giving them their orders. They walked through the gate. She opened the moment she was done giving her commands, and she patiently waited for the message to arrive from the Forsaken. The Forsaken were currently walking down the road toward Karn to drop off the 3 elf slaves they freed from that shithead just a few days ago. It wasn't actually the Forsaken leading them, but their doppelgangers. Ainz and Albedo had gone back to Nazarick not long after the invaders made their way towards the Great Tomb of Nazarick, so they could oversee the defenses of Nazarick. Albedo needed to teach Pandora's actor how to manage its defenses to maximum effect. Taylar had stayed behind with Narbril to look after the elves, and she was glad she made that decision. Taylar's plan was simple at first. She would spend the day and night with the elves with her 2 auras active to help them out of their trauma, as she did with Swear. She had only needed to spend a total of a few hours with the girl before the effects of her previous life were vanishing from her memory. The elves, on the other hand, they were much more complicated. She had needed every bit of the 4 days she spent with them to have any effect on them at all. She did not think it would take nearly that long considering how much trauma Swear had gone through. It just showed her how much more abuse, both physical and mental, these elves had been subjected to. While Swear had been raped repeatedly and beaten within an inch of her life a few times, as well as having gotten multiple diseases, it took only a few hours for those scars to start to disappear from her mind around Taylar. If it took these elves all 4 days of Taylar's constant company and attention, she couldn't even imagine what they had been put through in their lives. She had learned from the elves that the slain theocracy had places where they broke in their slaves. This is what has caused these young elven women so much trauma on top of having been sold to a piece of shit like Uzrith. Taylar didn't ask for specifics about the places the elves were broken in at. There were 2 reasons for that. First was that she didn't want any of those 3 to have to relive their time in that place. Nothing good would come of them telling her what happened to them there. The other reason was she was pretty sure if they told her what went on there, she would immediately teleport to the slain theocracy and start laying waste to it. All 3 were still relatively young, especially by elven standards. Once she had gotten them cleaned up and into some new clothes, she could tell just how young they were. She wanted to heal their cut ears as soon as she saw them, but held herself back. Even if she used the lowest tier spell she could to restore their ears, it would be much too powerful for what she was passing herself off as now. She doubted Tier 6 heal would work to restore their ears, but she was positive Tier 7 regenerate would. It would look awfully strange if she could magically cast Tier 7 spells all of a sudden. One of the elves was a priestess, and Taylar wasn't sure if she would be able to tell the tier of the spell she was casting. After she thought about it, she realized this would be a perfect opportunity for her to endear herself to these elves as Taylar and not Bella. Once she met up with them outside of Karn, she would use her Tier 9 spell mass regenerate on all 3 of them at once and hopefully earn some goodwill right off the bat as herself and not her adventurer persona. She was now contemplating what she was going to do with the couple hours she still had before she got the message to meet outside of Karn. It seemed someone else might decide what she was going to be doing when she heard the unmistakable sound of a gate opening a little ways behind her. Taylar was pretty curious as to who would be coming through the gate. Aura or Mare would be the logical choice since she was on their floor, and they were nowhere to be found. The first person through the portal, though, was neither, and she was a little surprised. Ainz stepped through the gate onto the 6th floor. He was followed closely by Albedo and Yuri Alpha, who had essentially become Albedo's shadow since being given her new assignment. Taylar was happy they were all there, but confused as to why. They were both supposed to be visiting the citizens of Nazarick until she was back from Karn. The giant grin on Ainz's face definitely did not go unnoticed by Taylar. At the moment, though, she just wanted to feel those lips against hers again and jumps into his arms and seals their lips together for a kiss. She needs to remind herself where she is and slowly climbs down from him before she gets too lost in what she is doing. Well, that was a very nice hello, Ainz says to her in a joking manner. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. She giggles a bit. What was with that grin you came here with? I know it wasn't just because you came to see me, she says playfully. The grin was for you. Seeing you always brings a smile to my face, but that smile was for what you inspire others to do, he says, and she looks at with a look of utter confusion on her beautiful face. What in the world is he talking about? Taylar thinks to herself. Yes, Taylar has inspired many in Nazarick to become more than they ever thought they could be. Albedo says to them. Very true, Albedo, but it seems that some are more inspired than others. Ainz says and plasters that cheesy grin back on his face. Now Taylar is completely lost on what the hell is going on. What the hell are you two going on about? Of course, I try to inspire those in Nazarick. Are you sure you two haven't just lost your mind all of a sudden? It would make your current conversation make a little bit of sense. Taylar says to them, and she can see them holding their laughter back behind their hands, trying hard not to laugh at her little outburst. There's no need to get testy, my love. We were merely talking about your biggest fan and her ever-present need to try and impress you. Ainz says to her. My biggest fan? Are you talking about Enri? She asks. He is talking about Lupusregina, of course. Albedo says to her. Wait, what? Since when was Lupusregina my biggest fan? Taylar asks. I'm guessing when she was created? Ainz says, a little unsure of that fact. Didn't you find it odd she was hesitant to attack you in Eyes? Or that she tries to be around you every moment possible? She sits as close as she can to you when we share meals with the Pleiades. Ainz says to her. She honestly didn't really realize any of that, but when she looks at Yuri and sees her nodding her head at everything Ainz is saying, there isn't really any denying it. She doesn't see the problem with it. At least she isn't looking up to Demiurge or Neuronist. That could end badly for the inhabitants of this world. Is there a problem with that? Are you feeling a little jealous, Ainz, that someone is looking up to me instead of you? She says in a joking tone. Absolutely not. You inspire me as well. Ainz says to her with that grin back on his face. She feels stupid for blushing like a silly little girl when he says that, but she calms herself quickly enough. So, you interrupted my prep time to tease me about Lupusregina? Taylar asks. No, just wanted to show you how inspiring you are to everyone. Lupusregina came up with a plan to strengthen Karn. I'm sure it was just to impress you, but it is actually a pretty good one. When I told her I would send Yuri to tell Enri the details, she said she had a better idea. Ainz can't help but stop and laugh at this. Lupusregina was certainly paying attention to everything Taylar did, Ainz realized when she told him this. Oh, Lupusregina said she had a better idea than you? I wish I would have heard that conversation, she says with a smirk. Yes, it was quite refreshing actually. So far only you and Albedo have done anything like that. It seems our Wolf Queen has been paying attention to everything you are doing. She thought it would be a better idea to send Peter to tell Enri about what she was doing instead of Yuri, hoping it would hurry your plans along for them, he says to her, and this time she can't help but laugh at that. I guess she has been paying attention to what I've been doing. So, what is this plan to strengthen Karn she came up with? Taylar asks, genuine curiosity in her tone. She is about to put it in motion. Let's go watch. Ainz says and opens a gate for them to walk through. They come out in the cherry blossom sanctuary right near Oriole, who already has her scrying windows open for them. It's all ready to go, just like you asked, Father, Oriole says to Ainz. Thank you, baby girl. Ainz says and hugs Oriole before sitting down before the monitors. Taylar also hugs her and settles down on the right side of Ainz, staring up at the screens, wondering what Lupusregina was about to do. Karn Village. Enri had been back from her last meeting for about an hour now. It was nice to just sit down and relax after having to talk to so many people over the last few days. Enri thought it would be much more work to get the village organized for her departure than it actually had been. The meetings were tedious and boring, but they were necessary to make sure everything would go smoothly while she was away in Nazarick. She only had 2 more days left before she was to leave, but almost everything had been taken care of already. The one thing she has been putting off was who was going to command the Death Knight in her absence. She certainly didn't need the protection in Nazarick, and since Nemu was coming with her, she wasn't really sure who to give command of him to. Her first thought was the old village chief, but it seemed the man could barely keep himself from pissing his pants just standing in the presence of the Death Knight, so that ruled him out. She was thinking maybe Enri or his grandmother, but they never step foot outside their house unless it has to do with some breakthrough with their potions, so they were ruled out as well. The more she thought about it, the more the answer became clear. She could just give Jugum command of the Death Knight. He was basically the leader of their small little force, and he would know when and how to use the Death Knight the most effectively. He also wasn't completely terrified of the Death Knight like just about everyone in the village. It made him the obvious choice. Just as she was about to get up and go find him, there was a knock at the door. Enri stood up from her seat and smoothed her dress out to get rid of any wrinkles that may have formed from her sitting down. It was completely unnecessary, but she did it out of habit. The clothes that Lady Taylar had given her never wrinkled and never seemed to get dirty at all. To think that Lady Taylar told her these were the ones she could wear for now because she knew Enri would still work in the fields regardless of being chief was surprising. Enri didn't think she should be wearing anything this nice to work a field, but she was assured by Lady Taylar that she couldn't ruin them if she tried, and they were just clothes for now. When she returned as a mayor instead of a chief, there would be a whole new wardrobe for her to try on, which would be too nice to wear into a field to work. Enri was pretty sure this was Lady Taylar's way to subtly tell her she wasn't a farmer anymore and needed to act the part after she returned. People would probably think her crazy, but that might be the hardest thing to do she has ever faced. She figured she would be a simple farmer her entire life and resigned herself to that fate at a very early age. Even if she did get married one day, she would more than likely be managing a farm just like her parents did. Thinking of herself as someone who didn't need to get out in the fields every day and put in a good day of hard, physical work was definitely taking some getting used to. She finally made it to the door, wondering who could be on the other side, and opened it. The person she saw standing there was not someone she was expecting to ever see at her door. Standing there in front of her was Peter, the leader of the Swords of Darkness. He was wearing something completely different than she had seen him in before. She had only seen him twice and only talked to him once, but it was the first time she had seen him without his armor on. He looked like a son of a great noble right now, and not an adventurer. Peter was wearing very nice tailored black trousers along with some very nice, what looked to be new boots. He had on a black, white, and red silk tunic that would be fitting for any great noble to wear. It caught her off guard at how handsome he looked, and she couldn't stop the reddening of her cheeks, no matter how much she willed it to stop. "Hello, Lady Enri," Peter says as he bows and grabs her hand to kiss it on her knuckles just like he did the first time they parted.
Hello, Peter.
"It is nice to see you again. What brings you here today?" Enri says. She still wasn't used to being treated like this, especially from someone like Peter, but she couldn't deny the feeling she got every time he kissed her hand or even just said something to her.
What?
"I can't just want to come and visit you," he says in a joking tone, but Enri was still a little too flustered to pick up on it. Oh, of course you can. It's just I didn't expect to see you in my little village," she stammers out. Peter can't help but chuckle at her reaction. Well, I did want to come to see how you were doing, but I have actually been sent here by Lord Ainz to deliver 2 messages for you. Peter tells her. Really? I'm supposed to be coming to Nazarick in 2 days. I wonder what is so important it couldn't wait until then. Enri says. The first message is that Lady Taylor will be coming in a few hours with some new villagers for you. They are apparently former slaves they found in the Baharuth Empire. There is 3 of them, all of them are elves and were treated very poorly, from what Lady Taylor has told me. She believes they will be useful to Karn. One of them is a ranger, who is farther along than either of the rangers you have and can teach both of them quite a bit. Another is a druid who Lady Taylor believes will be of great help whenever anyone ventures into the great forest of Tob for ingredients, helping out the farmers, and things of such a nature. The last one is a priestess. She should be able to heal any wounds or injuries anyone acquires here in Karn. Apparently, she can cast Tier 3 magic, so she should be very helpful for you and everyone else in Karn. Peter says to her, That sounds amazing. It will certainly be very helpful to have 3 people like that around. I have heard elf slaves are treated very poorly, though. Is Lady Taylor sure they will be comfortable being around so many humans? I'm sure they don't have the best experience with them. Even I've become a little wary of humans not from my village. I feel more comfortable around the goblins and Death Knight than I do strangers from outside the village. Enri says to him, Lady Taylor has been working on that for a few days. Lord Ainz told me they should have no problem fitting in here. He said it might take a little time for them to settle, but he doesn't see any problems arising if they are treated fairly. Peter tells her, That shouldn't be a problem. I'll make sure to give them a warm welcome when I get the chance to meet them. Enri smiles at Peter to thank him for the message, then remembers. Didn't you say you had 2 messages for me? I sure did. The next one is more instructions than a message. It has to do with Lupusregina, actually. She is on her way to Karn with some potential allies for Karn and wanted me to relay her instructions for you to follow so they would join your village without much of a hassle. Peter says to her, Oh, what instructions did Lupusregina have? This should be good. She is very, interesting, let's say. Enri can't help but giggle at that. Lupusregina was certainly a character. She almost looks up to her like an older sister now that she has been able to spend a good amount of time with her. Well, she is actually on her way right now. I can brief you on what she wants to do while we walk to the front gate if that is all right with you, Enri.
Peter says.
That sounds fine, Peter. Enri says to him. He holds out his elbow to escort her to the front gate, and she quickly takes the offered arm. Now, Lady Enri, first I need you to put this on. He pulls out a necklace that looks like it has a feather charm attached to it. How good are you at acting? Peter says as they make their way towards the front gate to meet with Lupusregina. The Great Forest of Tob. Lupusregina was unsure if this was the right course of action until she asked Lord Ainz if this was a good idea. When he told her it was brilliant, she wanted to jump up and down like a little girl who just got her favorite treat in the world at that moment. She was afraid she had overstepped a little when she told Lord Ainz she thought it was a better idea to send Peter to inform Enri instead of Yuri Alpha. He was not only in agreement, but seemed incredibly happy she suggested such an action. It seemed that her plans so far to get farther into the good graces of Lady Taylor had somehow also benefited in her getting a higher opinion in also Lord Ainz's eyes. So far, this has been a wonderful success and has completely surpassed her expectations already. She hasn't even gotten to the village for the plan yet, and already she can't stop smiling at her quick thinking. When she came across this group, she was sure the best course of action was killing them all and hopefully get closer to her goal of becoming a war priestess. While she was up in the high branches of the tree about to pounce on her prey, a question popped into her head. What would be better, getting closer to war priestess or gaining more favor with Lady Taylor? She had noticed that Lord Ainz had given Enri a death knight for the security of herself and the village. Lupusregina didn't take this as a slight to her abilities. She is often away from Karn on business given to her by Lady Taylar and Lord Ainz. She and all of the Pleiades have been clearing out the great forest of Taub and Azurlija mountains for a little while now. For some reason, Lord Ainz wanted a clear traveling path from the mountains to E-Rantel. Lupusregina didn't really care for the reasoning. She was just glad to kill things in service to the Supreme Ones. Lupusregina figured that since she was regularly given opportunities to gain experience, but rarely to gain favor in the eyes of her hero, that this would be a good chance to do just that. So instead of her instinct to kill everything she was watching right now, she decided on a better idea. She would still get to kill one of them anyway. These weaklings did only follow the strong, so a demonstration of her power would be necessary. She surveyed the group of 11 ogres and 51 goblins to find her best course of action. It was certainly one of the ogres that would have to be the target of her demonstration. It was a shame to lose that much strength from this group, but you can't really show off your strength on a goblin. Even a normal human can kill one of those if they get a lucky hit in. She watched the group walking through the forest and decided it was time. She jumped out of the tree and landed about 10 feet away from the group of ogres leading this little party through the forest. She had her holy weapon resting on her shoulder behind her head and looked straight at the group. "Hey, I'm going to need you to stop right there for me," Lupusregina says to the group. The ogres at the front of the group all look at each other wondering what to do. After just a moment, they look back at her, and the one in the middle closest to her begins to raise his weapon to strike her. The ogre never even gets the chance to start lowering his weapon when all of a sudden, his head, neck, and shoulders explode in a red mist. The ogre's entire body is lifted off the ground from the force of the impact and sent flying backward over the entire group of ogres and goblins that were following the first group. None in the group can really process what happened as they stare at a headless, almost shoulderless corpse land just behind them. They all turn their attention back towards the woman who fell out of the trees just a moment ago. She is still standing right in front of the group of ogres. She has her feet spread a little, her weapon is still resting on her shoulder, but there is blood dripping from the end of it onto the ground behind her. Her right arm is straight out in front of her with her pointer and middle fingers spread out making a V. No one from the group of goblin and ogres still seem to process what just happened to their tribesmen. The ogre that was standing next to the one that just got killed starts to raise his weapon, but a voice yells out from behind him. "Stop." The ogre stops raising his arm and looks back towards who called out to him. A goblin steps forward and makes his way towards the front of the group. He is walking a little straighter and more confident than anyone else in the party. There also seems to be an intelligence in his eyes that the other goblins do not possess. He finally makes his way to Lupusregina and looks up at her. "Oh, aren't you a brave little guy, hee. Are you the leader of this little band of misfits?" Lupusregina asks the hobgoblin. "I am Egu, the tribe leader of this group." "Who are you?" he says to her. "You're a feisty little one, aren't you? I'm Lupusregina Beta, servant of the rulers of Nazarick and protector of Karn village. Where exactly are you off to, little Egu?" Lupusregina asks him. "As far away from the monument of destruction as we can get, and it's just Egu." "I am not little," he tells her. "I admire your bravery, little Ego, but watch your tone, or you will end up like that ogre hee. The airy giggle she gives is in stark contrast to the glare of murderous killing intent he sees in her eyes." "So you are headed to safety then?" she finally asks. Why, yes, we are," he stumbles out now, terrified of saying the wrong thing. "Oh well, if it is safety you seek, I think I have just the place for you. Tell me, can you take orders from a human, little Egu?" she asks. "We only follow the strong. Humans are weak," Egu says to her. "Oh, well, this human is not only strong, but also holds the favor of the strongest beings this world has ever seen. If you can get along with the others in the village and listen to Mayor Enri, you'll be accepted and safe in Karn, so what do you say?" she asks them. All the goblins and ogres are looking at Egu waiting for an answer. He knows that being a hobgoblin and son of the former tribe leader makes this his responsibility. He makes his decision based on both fear and logic. There doesn't seem to be any reason to say no. It is quite obvious that Lupusregina Beta could kill them all if she so wished to. They might as well take the chance of finding a safe place to live instead of waiting for the creatures from the Monument of Destruction to come and kill them. "We shall follow you to this village, Lupusregina Beta," Agus says to her. "All right, follow me." Lupusregina gives a little jump and fist up in the air before she turns and starts walking towards Karn. "This is going even better than I thought. Maybe I'll be able to ask Lady Taylar to train me before I make it to War Priestess. That would be the best." Lupusregina thinks to herself as she turns around and starts walking towards Karn. It didn't take very long for Lupusregina to lead the little tribe to the front gate of Karn. What she saw was even more impressive than she suggested. She had told them to have some of Enri's summoned goblins outside the gate to show that goblins were, in fact, safe here. She did not expect to see 18 of the 20 that live here standing out front, in 2 perfect lines, directing the group straight towards the gate. Lupusregina stopped about 20 feet short of the gate, right at the end of the lines of goblins. She looked up at the closed gate and continued her eyes up towards the top of the wall. Standing atop the wall was the person she was looking for, getting ready to do exactly what she had planned. The man atop the wall jumped straight off the side right towards them. He landed just in front of Lupusregina in a cloud of dust that appeared from the dirt road he landed on. The goblins and ogres couldn't comprehend how a human could do such a thing. Before they could try to figure it out, the man spoke to Lupusregina. "Good day, Lupusregina. How may the village of Karn assist you today?" Peter says to Lupusregina. "Nice entrance, Peter," she winks at him. "I'm here to see Mayor Enri. There are some folks who would like to join the village," she says to him as she points over her shoulder with her thumb. Peter just nods in acknowledgement and turns towards the gate. "Boss," Peter yells at the gate. The front gate started to slowly open. Everyone outside of the village all turned their attention towards the gate to see who emerged. Every one of them heard the first newcomer before they saw it. A thunderous shockwave could be felt reverberating through the ground. The sound of the heaviest footsteps any of them had ever heard before came from behind that gate. Each step seemed to shake the very ground they were standing on, and soon a figure emerged from the gate that had every goblin and ogre shaking in fear except the goblins who lived in Karn. A 10-foot-tall incarnation of death walked through the gate straight to the front of the group. 2 horns were protruding from its helmet, which covered its rotting face beneath it. It had the blackest armor, shield, and cloak any of them had ever seen. The wavy, serrated sword held in its right hand seemed to emit a black and crimson mist that only added to the overall terrifying appearance of the creature before them. What truly had them at a loss for words was on the Death Knight's right shoulder. Sitting atop his right shoulder was a blonde-haired human. It looked as if this terrifying creature of pure death was nothing more than a carriage to this human. She rode atop his shoulder like he was her mount, and it made them all wonder just how ridiculously powerful this human must be to command a creature as terrifying as this. As the Death Knight stopped in front of them, the human on its shoulder looked down on them from her perch atop his shoulder. It seemed as if she was studying them, trying to figure out if they were worthy enough to be allowed in her presence. It made Aga damn near piss himself thinking of what would happen to them if this human decided they weren't worth it. On top of the Death Knight's shoulder, though, the look the goblins were interrupting as calculating from Enri was in stark contrast to what she was feeling inside. As she looked down on them with the sternest expression she could muster, trying to follow Lupu's instructions. Enri did not doubt that this was a good idea. Having more goblins and ogres to protect the village would solve a number of issues for them. She had built a small militia force to protect Karn when Lupu wasn't around, but they were still just villagers learning to fight. Trying to replace the fighting power of Lupu when she wasn't here was almost impossible for Enri to do. Even after receiving the Death Knight from Lord Ainz, it would be hard to replace Lupu. There was no doubt the Death Knight could probably kill the whole village even if they banded together, but Lupu would still defeat the Death Knight with no problem if they ever fought. Enri imagined it would take one of Lupu's sisters to be able to replace her, but 10 ogres was a damn good start from a strength perspective. One ogre was about 20 times stronger than a human, so that would make up for a lot. Also, as ridiculous as it was to say, she trusted goblins and ogres more than most humans at the moment. That's not even mentioning that she currently placed all of her trust in a very large group of heteromorphic beings. Enri steeled herself, so she wouldn't show the worry that lay underneath the mask she had to put on. She was nervous about talking to these goblins since they weren't anything like the ones she summoned with the horn. But as childish as it might sound, she was worried she would look foolish dismounting from this Death Knight like Lupu wanted her to. She only got to practice with the necklace for 5 minutes before she needed to go out and talk to them. She wasn't exactly confident she would stick the landing like Peter promised she would. Falling on her face before she could even say a word to this group would probably make any talk
Pointless.
who would follow a leader who just face plants in the ground after dismounting her supposed ride. Enri readied herself to dismount and sent a silent prayer hoping she didn't make an ass of herself. She knew even if things went horribly wrong, Lupu, Peter, and the Death Knight wouldn't let anything happen to her. Right before she pushes off, she activates the item around her neck by saying,
Fly.
A faint blue light encompasses Enri for a moment before she pushes herself off the Death Knight's shoulder. She floats down to the ground as smooth and slow as a feather. She makes a perfectly soft landing and looks up at Lupusregina. You say there are some who wish to join the village, Lupu? Enri asks her. Of course, boss, but I'm not really sure if they are worth it though, Lupusregina says as she holds out her right hand towards Enri and her left towards the tribe of goblins and ogres. Enri grabs Lupusregina by the hand and twists her wrist. Lupusregina falls down on one knee and looks up at Enri. Oh wait, why you gotta be so mean, boss lady? Lupu pouts at her. Enri would never dream in a million years of doing this to Lupusregina, but she was just following her instructions. She knew Lupusregina could stand up and throw her back over the wall at any moment she so desired. Enri still had no idea why Lupusregina insisted on doing this, but she figured she had a good reason for it. She certainly couldn't picture any of Nazarick's subordinates acting weak, to a lowly human as most of them liked to put it, unless there was a good reason behind it. I think it is up to me to decide if they are worth it or not, Lupu. Enri says to Lupusregina, then turns towards the tribe as she lets Lupusregina's hand go. So, who is the leader of this little group? Enri asks in her most intimidating voice. TT, that would be me. A little goblin approached her with those words. The poor thing looks downright terrified of her, but that was the point of all this, she supposed. He looked to be much more intelligent than the other goblins with him. He looked almost like the goblins she summoned. Well, he looked just as intelligent, but he certainly wasn't nearly as strong-looking. You wish to join our village? Enri asks Egu. Yes, punto. Egu nervously replies. Do you swear to follow all of my commands? To protect this village with your lives if it comes to that? And to help this village so that we all prosper? Enri asks him. We swear. Egu says with some confidence that wasn't there just a moment ago. Egu takes a knee and bows his head to Enri to show his loyalty. As soon as he does this, the rest of his tribe all drop to one knee and bow their heads just as he is doing. Enri seemed to think they would keep their word, and that was the end of this farce she had been putting on as some powerful being. Enri jumps up off the ground and floats back up onto the Death Knight's shoulder. She would have preferred to walk through the gate, but she needed to keep up the mummery for just a little while longer. All right, follow me, and we will get you all situated in the village. Enri says then the Death Knight turns back towards the gate and heads inside. Peter, Lupu, and the rest of everyone standing outside follow her back into the village. Enri couldn't help but think this would be a long day. She had to get all these goblins and ogres into houses, and she still had yet to meet the 3 new elves that Lady Taylor was bringing by later today. Luckily for her, there would be no intimidation needed for the elves. In fact, Peter told her Lady Taylor wanted the exact opposite when she met them. She was supposed to be friendly, inviting, and trusting towards them. This was something that Enri felt much more comfortable doing. She didn't think it would be nearly the mental drain that acting in front of these goblins and ogres had been. As Enri was walking around showing the village to the goblins and ogres, Peter was still near her the entire time. She had no idea if he was ordered to do this here because he wanted to be, or what the reason was. Lupusregina had disappeared like she usually did into thin air, so she couldn't ask her. She had no doubt she would show back up if something happened. They were over by the newly built storage sheds at the moment. They were being built to store the harvest, but Enri was going to give up 2 of them for the ogres. It was really the only place they could house them. They had more than enough already anyway, and were only constructing 2 more before they were finished. She was pointing out the second to last shed under construction when Peter did something that made her jaw drop. 2 goblins were carrying one of the long logs to be an exterior wall when one of them lost their balance. He was about to topple over and have the large log fall right onto him when Peter took one step and covered about 20 feet. He grabbed the middle of the log and picked it up all by himself, carried it over to the shed, and set it down in place like it weighed nothing. She couldn't help but have her mouth fall open and just stare at him in amazement. That would be something she would expect from one of these ogres. Not a man who couldn't be more than a couple years older than her. She didn't get a chance to change her expression before Peter turned around. It seemed neither did the goblins by his question. "What?" he asked. He was seriously confused as to why the goblins and Enri were looking at him like that. "Exactly how strong are you?" Enri couldn't help but ask. Peter seemed to finally understand what the looks were for as he looked back at the log he had just set down. He was guessing it probably weighed hundreds of pounds, but it didn't feel like it to him. Well. He rubs the back of his neck and reddens a little. "I don't really know, to be honest. I've only been able to hit something with all my strength one time. Lord Ainz does not wish for us to go all out until we gain adamantite rank at the guild." Peter tells Enri. "What did you get to hit with all your strength?" She asks him again, now curious as to what he would have to hit that hard. "It was at our final test to see if our initial training was done," he says to her as I drift back and forth between her and the Death Knight. "Wait, you had to fight a Death Knight," she almost yells. "Well, yeah, but it wasn't like I was alone. It was my whole team versus a Death Knight. I don't think I would last long against one myself," Peter says. "I think you might be wrong about that." Enri mumbles to herself. "What?" Peter asks. "Nothing, it's nothing. How about we continue on," she says to him. Sounds go dash. Peter stops mid-sentence and seems to be concentrating on something. "Yes, Your Majesty. I will inform her right away." He pauses a moment and she sees him turn a little red. "Yes, I am still here, Your Majesty. I hope that I was not dash." He stops mid-sentence again and she sees him sigh in relief after a moment. "I will let her know, Your Majesty. Thank you." Peter seems to be done with his self-conversation and makes his way over towards Enri. That was a message from Queen Taylar. She is on her way to the front gate with the new villagers. Peter tells her. "Well, let's not keep Her Majesty waiting then," Enri says to Peter. They began walking towards the gate, and Enri was putting that one-sided conversation together in her head while they were walking. It sounded like he was apologizing for still being in Karn, which would mean he wasn't ordered to be here. Perhaps Lupusregina just had him stay and didn't tell Lady Taylor? After thinking for so long about it, So couldn't help but ask. "So, did you get in trouble for staying with me all this time?" she asks with a little smirk planted on her lips. "Well, she didn't think I'd still be here. That was all." I was going to ask if that was okay with her, but she cut off my question and said it was fine before I could even ask. Peter tells her as his cheeks heated back up. I'm glad you didn't get in trouble then. Enri says with a smile. I doubt she would get mad at anyone in Nazarick for spending time with you. You seem to be hers and Princess Oriel's favorite. Peter says to her. Lady Taylor has been incredibly kind to me and Carn Village, but I doubt I am her favorite. I've only met Oriel one time really. I'm not sure how I'd be her favorite too. She responds, but that isn't what she is thinking. By the gods. I wish people would stop saying I'm Lady Taylor's favorite. Do they have any idea what kind of pressure that is? She screams in her mind. Princess Oriel hasn't stopped talking about being able to teach you tactics or that you don't call her by any of the titles she dislikes. She is even wearing her hair, just like you now. Peter chuckles at the last bit from the look on Enri's face. Great, Lady Taylor's favorite and Princess Oriel's best friend. I'm glad I'm not under some immense amount of pressure or anything. Enri laughs, but it isn't a joyous one as Peter can tell. I can certainly think of much worse things than being the favorite of a goddess and best friends with her daughter. Peter chuckles a moment before continuing. I know Princess Oriel is grateful that you treat her as a friend. I'm sure Lord Ainz, Lady Taylor, and Lady Albedo feel the same. I'm sure she has tons of people around her who are nice to her. She is the Princess of Nazarick after all, she tells him. You are right. Everyone is very nice to her, but... He trails off until she looks at him. No one treats her as a friend. They all treat her as the Princess of Nazarick. You may be the only person she truly considers a friend. I think that is why they would be grateful to you in particular, he finishes to Enri. Oh, I guess I never thought of it like that. If you have noticed this, why haven't you tried to befriend Oriel? Enri asks Peter. Oh, well, I didn't want Lord Ainz to get the wrong idea. He smiles a bit sheepishly. As much as His Majesty loves his queens, I imagine the wrath he would invoke on anyone who dare harm his daughter in any way would be terrifying on a whole nother level. I didn't want to risk him misunderstanding my intentions. Luckrot has kind of made him extra vigilant around those not from Nazarick when it comes to those from Nazarick, he tells her. Do you really think Lord Ainz would react that harshly if you actually did try with Oriel? I know he is very protective of her, but you are a good person from what I've been able to see, Peter. Enri says to him. Well, Lord Ainz did tell me he would support me if I fell for someone from Nazarick and wished to pursue a relationship with them. His daughter, though, I doubt anyone would ever get that stamp of approval. Peter tells her. I'm sure you'd find someone in Nazarick to make you happy. I don't think I've ever met anyone from Nazarick who wasn't beautiful. You just have to find someone who also makes you happy. Enri says with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. You may be right, and I am grateful Lord Ainz has so much trust in me that he would welcome me into Nazarick like that, but I already have my heart set on someone, and she isn't from Nazarick. Peter tells her. Oh, really? Enri asks curious now as to who he is talking about.
Yes.
She is just as beautiful as anyone from Nazarick. She is very kind and compassionate, and I'm sure she will grow into a great woman in the future. Peter says. Have you told her any of this yet? Enri asks. I just did. Peter thinks to himself, but that isn't what came out of his mouth. I don't know if she feels the same or even thinks of me that way. We have just started being friends, and I don't want to mess that up if she doesn't feel as I do. Peter says to Enri. Enri was about to open her mouth and tell him that he should tell her and take the chance if that is how he felt, but she saw him quickly drop to one knee. She looked up and realized they were at the gate already and her conversation with Peter was over for the time being. She dropped to one knee like he did as she saw Lady Taylor approaching through the open gate. Thank you for the warm reception. Everyone rise and go about your day. Taylar tells everyone near the gate. Enri stands with everyone else and waits for Lady Taylor to make her way over towards her. She can see the 3 elves that were following Lady Taylor. They seemed a little wary of their new surroundings, but that would be understandable if they were former slaves of the slain theocracy. If anyone could relate to the savagery and brutality of the slain theocracy, it was those of Karn village. They probably didn't have to deal with the suffering that those three elves had to deal with, but they would find that everyone in this village hates the slain theocracy almost as much as they did. Enri hoped the elves would find themselves comfortable here after a time. She knew they would be welcomed with open arms, especially after she told the rest of the village that they were former slaves of the slain theocracy. If nothing else, the mutual hatred of the theocracy between the elves and villagers should give them a good common ground to start on. Lady Taylor, it is always a pleasure when you grace us with your presence. Enri gives a bow to her before turning to the elves. And we welcome your guests too. We hope you three find our little village to your liking and hope that one day you can consider it your home if you decide to stay with us. I am Enri Amat, Chief of Karn Village. Enri finishes to the three elves. You are already becoming quite the leader, Enri. Taylar says as she looks around at the various races going about their day in Karn. And you already know how to greet guests like a true leader of a city. Just remember, that is going to be Mayor Enri soon. Taylar looks at Enri and gives her a smile after those words. Thank you, my queen. I still have a long way to go, but I try my hardest not to disappoint you. Enri replies to her. I doubt you could disappoint me at this point, Enri, but where are my manners? Let me introduce you to the newest residents of Karn. Taylar motions for the three elves to step up before she continues. Our first beautiful elf here is Tinia Vathana. She is a ranger by trade, and I believe she would be very helpful teaching your two rangers a thing or two about their trade. She is powerful enough to know ranger spells, so I believe her help would be invaluable to you. Taylar says as she points to the pink-haired, green-eyed elf. Our next beauty here is Tsara Baron. She is a druid, and I'm sure I don't need to outline the benefits this village could receive to have a druid amongst its population. I'm sure being an elf would make her even more valuable than any normal druid, as I have heard of her proficiency in the forest from the adventurers who brought them to us. Taylar says as she gestures towards the blonde-haired, green-eyed elf standing in the middle of the three elves. And last, but not least, our last beautiful elf is Ashrin Kelsey's. She is a priestess. Once the priestess of Alolaf as forced on her by the slain theocracy, but she is now the very first ever priestess of the goddess of life. Apparently, she thought I would be a much more fitting deity to follow. Taylar adds with a little giggle as she points towards the blue-haired, green-eyed elf at the end of the group. Enri could see the robes she was wearing and had seen the symbol on her chest before. It was the same symbol on the banner that hung behind the thrones in the throne room in Nazarick. The only difference was there were two white wings on either side of the symbol. Her robes were mostly red with white, and black used to outline or highlight different areas of the robe. Enri honestly thought the robes were more suited for the fashion of the royal capital than on a priestess. The shoulders, neck, and upper chest were exposed. There were long slits that ran up either side of the robe along her thighs, and it seemed to hug the elf's body. They were vastly different than the loose-fitting, not at all flattering, robes that every other priest of all other faiths wore. Let me officially welcome you to Karn Village, Tinia, Tsara, and Ashrin. I hope you all can be comfortable here and think of this as home one day. We are glad you could all join us, and I'm sure that a lot of the villagers will be very happy to hear we have the first ever priestess of our savior and goddess living amongst us. Enri says with a smile towards all of them, but especially towards Ashrin. I'm sorry, how could I forget? Ladies, this handsome young man standing next to Enri is Peter Mock. Not a single one of them missed Peter's face turn tomato red when Lady Taylar called him handsome. He is the leader of the Swords of Darkness. They are the adventure team that serves us in Nazarick. We rescued them from some unfortunate circumstances, and they have proven their loyalty to Nazarick, so you can trust him and his team in the future if you need assistance. Taylar tells the elves. Her Majesty is too modest. She brought my entire team back from the dead, and for that, we can never truly repay her, but she is right. If you ever need anything in the future, and you see me or any of my teammates, don't hesitate to ask. I will bring the other around so you can meet them whenever I get the chance. Peter says to the 3 elves. Well, Peter will be back in 2 days anyway. That should give you enough time to settle in, and I'll make sure he brings the rest of his team with him, so you can meet them all. Taylar says, and gets a smile from Peter's reaction. He had no idea he was coming back here to pick Enri up for her transport to Nazarick, but she will tell him that when they leave and head back to Nazarick. I will make sure to let the Swords of Darkness know they will be traveling here, Your Majesty, once I return to Nazarick. Peter tells Lady Taylar. Why don't we go get these 3 settled in Enri? I'm sure you have had a long day and would like to have at least a little rest. Taylar says to her, knowing Enri has been running around all day situating the new goblins and ogres in Karn village, but then she remembers her waiting golems. Oh wait, she opens a gate a little bit near the front gate. These guys are going to replace your wall for you. They already have their orders, so you don't need to have anyone oversee their work. Once it is replaced, they will lay the wood back on top, so no one can see what the wall is really made of. Enri looks behind her to the portal and sees a golem come out pushing a metal cart, but this cart doesn't have any wheels. It looks to be floating off the ground. Enri shouldn't be amazed at any of this anymore, but she can't help it. And now she is curious as to what the wall is being replaced with. What's in the carts? She finally asks. Those are the bricks that are going to make up your wall. Taylar tells her. Enri didn't see the air quotations around bricks, and she took it literally. Wow, a stone wall that long will be much better than our wood one, Enri states. Now she feels a little better about Karn's safety. Oh no, we just shaped them to look like bricks. The wall will be made of adamantite, Taylar states, and not only does Enri's jaw drop, but so does Peter's. How can you have that much adamantite? It was Peter who asked, and not Enri. Where we are from, adamantite isn't a rare thing. In fact, it's about an average metal to work with and utterly useless to someone of my power. We have a small mountain of it in Nazarick. What we use on Karn will only be a small fraction of how much we actually have. Taylar tells them, and this does nothing to close their mouths. After seeing they had no more questions, Taylar wanted to continue on, so she said, how about we get these 3 settled now? Enri could only nod her head, and thank the gods, she had already looked for a place for these 3. She didn't think her brain would be working for a little bit after that last revelation. Since Enri had known of their arrival since Peter arrived earlier in the day, she had already picked out 3 houses right next to each other the elves could occupy. She wasn't sure if they each wanted their own place or were going to stay together. There was still plenty of unoccupied houses since the attack, so space wasn't becoming an issue yet. The elves made that even less of a problem when they decided that they all wanted to stay in the same house. Enri couldn't really fault them for that. She is sure they went through some terrible times, and being together probably made them feel safer. It didn't take long to get the elves situated in their new home and tell them where she could be found if they needed anything. She told them about her leaving for Nazarick in 2 days and who they could talk to in her absence. After she was through with the elves, Peter and Lady Taylar accompanied her back to her house so she could get dinner started for Nemu. The walk back was nice and filled with conversation. Lady Taylar seemed to do most of the talking. Well, really, she was asking a bunch of questions, but Enri certainly wasn't going to not answer them. When your goddess asks you a question, you don't exactly say no to her. After they arrived at the house and were about to say goodbye to each other, Peter cut off the goodbyes before they could start. Your Majesty, do you mind if I talk to you for a moment before we depart? Peter says to Lady Taylar. She is definitely intrigued and doesn't see any reason to say no. Sure, Peter. We will be right back, Enri. Just give us a moment, she says. Enri sees Peter and Lady Taylar walk off a little bit and start talking. She can't hear what they're saying, but Peter looks almost embarrassed to be asking Lady Taylar whatever he wished to speak with her about. Lady Taylor doesn't seem to have nearly the same reaction as he did. She sees her say something to Peter, then laughs, and puts a hand on his shoulder as if she was saying it was all right. She notices them walking back over towards her and readies herself to say goodbye to the two of them. Every time Lady Taylor comes to Cairn, Enri wishes she would stay forever. She knows she can't, but she can dream, damn it. Honestly, she has been to Nazarick and doesn't understand why Lady Taylor leaves at all. That place is like heaven. She doubts she would leave if she lived there. Enri, it is always nice to see you. I'll see you in Nazarick soon, Taylor says to her. Enri goes to drop to a knee to say goodbye, but to her surprise, Lady Taylor is hugging her before she can get down. She isn't really sure what to do, so she awkwardly returns the hug, trying not to turn red. Hugging Lady Taylor meant her body was pressing against Enri's, and Lady Taylor had the kind of body women of any age would kill for. Enri was sure she was not attracted to women, but being around two women as beautiful as Lady Taylor and Lady Albedo always made her want to question her sexuality. She wasn't sure why that was, but it was hard to have a clear thought when being this close to Lady Taylor. Lady Taylor finally broke the hug after a few moments and gave Enri her last parting words before she walked off. You don't have to kneel, or any of that when it is just us, Enri. If you feel you need to do something, a slight nod of the head will suffice. I'll see you soon, she waves as she walks away. Enri just waves back at her, not really sure what to say. After a few moments, she realizes there is still one person there to say goodbye to and drops her arm down to the side, slightly embarrassed that she hadn't paid attention to Peter at all with the awkward goodbye she had with Lady Taylor. Before she can say goodbye first, Peter starts talking. There is something I wanted to ask you, but something I think I should say first before I ask. Is that all right? Peter asks Enri. Sure, Peter. Enri says to him, wondering what this was about. Do you know that I'm not human? He says to her. That question did catch her off guard. She did remember talking to the Swords of Darkness and learning of their resurrection, but she didn't remember anything about them not being human anymore. Peter certainly looked human to her. You look like a human, Peter. I'm not sure why you felt the need to tell me, but as you saw today, it doesn't matter to me what race people are as long as they can get along with others. Enri tells him. Yes, I did see that today. I just wanted to, well, what I mean is... Why does this girl make me so nervous? Thank God the other aren't here. I never hear the end of it. Peter thinks before Enri interrupts his rambling. Do you mind if I ask what race you are if you aren't a human? Enri says. I'm an Aasimar. It's a race of angels. We were reincarnated into that race when we were brought back. Peter tells her. Well, you still look human, and I'm sure there was a reason Lady Taylor did such a thing. Is that what you wanted to know? Enri asks. No, I just wanted to make sure you were okay with that. Just ask her already, you dipshit. The reason I wanted to let you know is that the royal wedding will be taking place while you are in Nazarick. I was wondering if maybe if you wanted to, if you would like to go with me? Maybe. If you are okay with that, that is... God, do I sound as stupid as I think I do? He thinks to himself after he rambled out that sorry excuse for asking her out on a date. Oh, I would love to, but I'm not sure I can just show up at their wedding like that. Enri says. Lady Taylor said she was going to invite you and name you anyway. I just thought maybe you'd like to accompany me, he says. Well, like I said, I'd love to, but I can't just leave Nemu. Maybe we could dash. Before Enri could finish, she was startled as Lupusregina interrupted her. She appeared right behind her, speaking over her shoulder. I'll watch Nemu for you so you can go on your date, Lupusregina says to Enri, who still has no idea where in the world she came from. Even Peter looks startled, and he was staring right at Enri. They both turn pretty red in embarrassment at the statement, though. I don't want to just dump Nemu on you, Lupu. Enri says. Nowhere in that statement did she deny it was a date. She had been secretly hoping she was that girl Peter was talking about earlier. Don't worry about that, your little sister is fun, plus, we can continue our throwing lessons once the reception gets more adult-themed. Lupusregina says to Enri, who somehow turns an even brighter shade of red at the end of Lupu's statement. Throwing lessons? Enri asks. She knows Lupu by now, and she isn't going anywhere near that last statement, so she can keep teasing her. Just darts and knives right now. I was thinking of trying some shurikens. Next, when she gets a little bigger, we can move up to axes, spears, and things like that, Lupu says with a wink towards Enri. You have been teaching her to throw what? Enri almost yells. Well, she's pretty good, and don't you want her to be able to defend herself? Lupu says. That pretty much got Enri to just close her mouth. She really didn't have anything to say about that. She would certainly feel much better if Nemu could at least defend herself somewhat. From the sound of it, she could probably defend herself better than Enri right now. Yes, you are right. Are you sure it's all right with you? Enri asks her one more time. It will be my pleasure, and maybe you'll get some of your own, Lupu says to her with a suggestive smile on her face. Well then, I will gladly accompany you to the wedding, Peter. Enri says as she turns to Peter. There was no way she was going to address that last statement from Lupu. Her face had returned to its natural color, but the dusting of pink as she accepted was slightly noticeable. The smile on Peter's face was very noticeable. I look forward to the day even more now then, Enri. Until next time. Peter says and grabs her hand again to kiss the back of it. He gives a slight bow and walks towards where Lady Taylar was waiting. Have fun on your date, Enri. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, Lupu says with a wink as she takes off into the air before Enri can respond. She looked towards where Peter had walked and saw Lady Taylar open a gate in front of Peter. The moment Peter stepped through his gate, Lady Taylar then opened another in front of herself, and both disappeared from Karn village. Nazarick, 9th floor conference room. Taylar stepped through her gate right into the conference room. The smile on her face was obvious to everyone in the room, and there were a lot of people here. Ainz, Albedo, Oriel, Rubido, the other guardians, and the Pleiades were all present. Everyone stood to greet her on arrival with the normal, Your Majesty or Lady Taylar or whatever other honorifics they thought of that day, but Taylar really only had eyes for one person in the room at the moment. Normally, that would be either Ainz or Albedo, but at the moment her eyes were glued to Lupusregina Beta. The werewolf had truly gone beyond her duties towards Karn, and Taylar was beyond impressed at her clever thinking. Taylar was now fully aware of the reasoning behind such a move thanks to Ainz, but it didn't make it any less impressive. For someone of Nazarick to think of the security of anyone not from here was a leap forward, to say the least. Even if the reasoning behind it was for someone in Nazarick. Taylar wanted to reward Lupusregina somehow, but wasn't quite sure the appropriate reward to give her at the moment. But she definitely needed to let her know that her efforts were appreciated and noticed. She made her way right towards Lupusregina and never took her eyes off of her. She was seated in between Yuri Alpha and Solution. It seemed she noticed Taylar's eyes glued to her and couldn't help but stare back. Lupusregina wasn't sure what was about to happen when she saw Lady Taylar striding towards her, seemingly not paying attention to anyone but her. She thought maybe she overstepped by bringing more beings to Karn. She was just a protector of the village, and really her protection was only supposed to be directed at Enri, Nemu, Nfiria, and Lizzie. The thought that she overstepped and angered Lady Taylar made her want to shrink away into the shadows. Then she thought of telling, not asking, Lord Ainz to send Peter instead of Yuri made her even more worried. Perhaps she misread what Lady Taylar was doing with Enri and Peter, and she just screwed up her plans. It was enough for Lupusregina to wish to be anywhere else than where she was now, but that would be impossible right now. Lady Taylar was now standing before her, and there was nowhere for her to run to. Taylar put her hands on Lupusregina's shoulders and turned her, so they were facing each other. She'd figure out the reward tomorrow, when she planned on talking to Lupusregina, but for now, she wanted to show her how much she appreciated it. Lupusregina got a reaction from Lady Taylar she was not expecting. With that smile still plastered on Taylar's face, She leaned down just a bit and kissed Lupusregina on the forehead. She then brought Lupusregina into an almost bone-crushing hug. Lupusregina was so surprised at first she didn't even respond. Once it sunk in that Lady Taylor was proud of her, the sadistic werewolf was on the verge of tears when she wrapped her arm around Lady Taylor. She relished in the feeling of the embrace. It was like a parent who could only show you how proud they were with their feelings instead of their words. When Lady Taylor broke the embrace, it was a little disappointing. Lupusregina could still see and feel the pride coming from Taylor, so the disappointment was minimal. It lessened even more when she heard the pride coming through as she spoke to her. That was a very wise decision, Lupusregina. For you to be thinking of not just what is good for Nazarick, but for everything we are trying to do shows you growing and learning just as we wish for all of you to do. Even the way you went about it shows that you have been paying attention to everything we are doing and not just what includes you. Taylor looks at all the NPCs hoping they are paying attention to what she is saying. This is exactly what they need those from Nazarick to do. They need to come up with some of their own ideas instead of just blindly listening to everything her and Ainz say. You used the lesson that Ainz taught all of you, with the lizard men to your advantage. Using your strength to get them to listen, then showing them compassion and kindness by offering a place of safety. You even used that same lesson so that they would follow Enri without question. We have a lot more to do today still, but I want you to come to talk to me tomorrow morning after you have awakened. I have some things I would like to discuss with you. Taylor finally finishes. Of course, Lady Taylor. It would be my honor. Lupusregina replies to her. Taylor gives Lupusregina a final pat on the shoulders, then makes her way towards her seat. She had to stop for a moment when she passed by Albedo and saw the 3 roses that were woven into the braid in her hair. There was a white one, a gold one, and a green one. She was kind of surprised she would be wearing them like that. She obviously knew where she got them from, but Albedo didn't seem like the type to want to wear flowers in her hair. She couldn't help but ask. I like the roses in your hair, Albedo. I'm just a little surprised to see them there. Thank you, Lady Taylor. They are very beautiful. I'm glad to have received them, Albedo says to her, but never actually looks at her. Taylor did notice the reddening of her cheeks. She almost looked embarrassed, to be honest. Please, Mother, I had to almost threaten Albedo for her to allow me to put them in her hair. I could only take so many. I can't show off my gift from Lord Ainz in front of everyone. Or, I'm the Godslayer. How are people supposed to fear me when I have pretty roses in my hair? The Guardians are just too stubborn sometimes. Oriole says to Taylor. The looks on everyone's faces changed dramatically during Oriole's short speech. Everyone else in the conference room sat wide-eyed with this new information. Only Albedo, Taylor, Albedo, and Ainz knew that those roses came from Ainz. It only made Albedo even more embarrassed and red. No one had ever seen the Godslayer show much emotion, let alone blush. It was almost overwhelming. Well, I like wearing mine in my hair also. Oriole put mine in as well. Taylor pulls her braid from behind her back and wings and shows it to Albedo. There are 3 roses in her braid like she said, but they are all so light blue, they almost look white. There seems to be a light mist or something radiating from them as they all look at them. Ice roses from the 5th floor. They are my favorite in Nazarick. They emit a nice cool aura that feels lovely on my wings. Cositis is kind enough to keep them alive for me when I must leave them behind. I'm surprised I don't see Albedo's crimson and black roses in her hair. She usually never parts with them. Taylor looks towards Albedo at the end and gives a little giggle. Even before they started putting them in their hair, Albedo would carry the bouquet around with her. It seemed she didn't want to let them out of her sight for a moment. It was strange to see her without at least one of the roses. Oh, I am turning mine into a crown as you suggested, Taylor, and I don't want to wear it until it is perfect. Albedo responds to her. This caused Taylor to giggle again as she makes her way to her seat. It seems roses from Lord Ainz are a sacred treasure in this place, Taylor says as she giggles and sits down next to Ainz. Ainz would like nothing more than to deny such a thing, but the look on everyone's face says otherwise. He certainly wasn't going to tell Taylar. He made Albedo put the two she brought with her in her inventory until the meeting was over. So instead of rolling his eyes at Taylor's statement, he just tries to push the reason for them being here forward. Everyone knows why we are here today, so let's get started. Oriole, how is our schedule looking? Ainz asks her, but before she can respond, Demiurge interrupts her. My lord, surely the last two supreme beings cannot go aloe dash. Demiurge never got to finish his statement when he saw Lord Ainz turn his head and fix him with a glare. He had never felt fear in his entire existence. It made sense. Archdevils are immune to fear. But Demiurge was certain this is what being terrified felt like. It looked as if his lord was about to pull out his ridiculously terrifying scythe and cut him down with it, so he didn't have to waste the time to resurrect Demiurge. The thought made him shiver in his seat and look down at the table to avert his eyes from his great lord. For the last time, we will be fine. No one will speak of this again. Do you understand me? Ainz says and looks at everyone present in the conference room. Having to give them the same instructions 5, 6, 7, or more times was getting quite frustrating. He understood they were concerned with their safety, but they were all in here for the information briefing. They should be well at ease that nothing in either kingdom can hurt them, and there will be 8-edged assassins and shadow demons just in case. Yes, my lord. Everyone in the room echoes to him. Very good now, Oriole. Please continue, Ainz says to her. Oriole brings up 4 scrying windows for everyone in the room to view. The top left shows Emperor Jerkniv and his advisors. The bottom left shows the courtyard outside his terrace and the 200 soldiers occupying it. The top right shows King Ramposa III and his court getting ready to start their session. And finally, at the bottom right was Gazef Stronov. He was getting ready to leave his house and head towards the palace. As you can see, Father, we are right on schedule. Mother should finish before the warrior captain makes it to the conference room, so we can time your arrival perfectly. Oriole tells Ainz. That just leaves Taylar. Are you ready? Ainz says as he turns towards Taylar. You bet. She gets up from her seat, says her goodbyes, and turns to Yuri. Is the room I requested ready, Yuri? It is, Lady Taylar. Yuri replies. Ainz had already opened a gate with the staff and cast his Suffering Cloud spell while Taylar was talking to Yuri. By the time she was done, it was time for her to step through her gate to her destination. Baharuth Empire, Imperial Palace. Emperor Jerkniv was starting to get frustrated, and for the first time they can ever remember, his advisors could tell. The usually calm and collected emperor could not figure out his next move against this Ainz Olgaun. It made matters even worse not knowing what this being knew or anything about him other than his appearance. Even that wasn't so clear to him. The adventurers they had dispatched as security had returned after the agreed-upon 3 days, but not a single worker had returned with them. All they knew was that everyone who entered the tomb never returned. The Emperor had dispatched scouts to watch the surrounding area just in case a worker happened to stumble out, but even the scouts had disappeared. Fludda was absolutely no use in tracking down anything he asked for with magic. For the first time he can ever remember, Emperor Jerkniv was at a complete loss. He had no clever plan in his mind he was working through. Nothing was coming to mind at all, and it made a sense of dread start to overwhelm him. How could he already be outsmarted by this Ainz Olgaun? Was that truly what was going on? He had never met anyone he could not read or bend to his will. At the very least, he could always outsmart his opponents, but this seemed an insurmountable task at the moment. Well, does anyone else have any ideas? The Emperor asks his advisors. After the last debacle with the scouts, the Emperor had decided to bring in a few trusted advisors to see if they had other ideas. He knew the likelihood of such a thing was minuscule, but at this stage it was necessary. Your Majesty, perhaps the scouts are simply still waiting, and that is why we haven't heard anything back from them, one of them say to him. That is highly doubtful. They were given strict instructions to return here after a few days. They should have arrived 2 days ago. It is more than likely they have also been captured or killed. If that is the case, this Ainz Olgaun more than likely knows it was I who sent the scouts at the very least. It wouldn't surprise me if he has already figured out that we sent the workers as well, the Emperor says to him. If Ainz had figured out he was the one who sent the workers, and not the earl he had set up for the fall, that could be a serious problem. Instead of an unruly noble who simply overstepped without the emperor's knowledge, Ainz could consider this an invasion by his empire. That could lead to a war with a being whom he has no idea the strength of. While he had the best trained military in the world, he had no idea what kind of army Ainz could muster. The unknown factor made him at ease with the future. Perhaps we should send an emissary instead of scouts and workers. I will volunteer. Flutter is cut off by the emperor before he can finish. For the last time, you are not going, Gramps. You are the last person I can afford to lose if this Ainz turns hostile. You may be the only person in this world who can defeat him. I can't risk him getting you. Stop suggesting it.
You are not
going. Flutter simply nods his head to that. In truth, he knew the emperor wouldn't let him go. He thought suggesting it in front of new advisors might sway some of them to side with him, but none spoke up. He simply wanted to see his master again. It had been too long in his opinion, and Flutter had many questions about the book he was translating. They spent some more time trying to come up with the next step. The emperor started to think that maybe bringing more people in was the wrong idea. Each suggestion was more idiotic than the next, and it was starting to give him a headache. It was during the most ridiculous, one of them, all that they were interrupted. Why don't we just mobilize the army and invade before he dash? What the hell are those? Everyone at the meeting hears one of the guards on the terrace yell. Before the emperor can get up to see what he is talking about, he hears them. We carry a message from the Supreme One. Your emperor has sent invaders into our home, and he shall answer for his crimes. Prepare to receive our emissary or face his divine wrath. Emperor Jerkniv had made it out the door to the terrace when the first sentence had finished. He looked up towards where he heard the message being relayed, and terror seized him. He saw black. Clouds made of tortured-looking faces screamed down a message all across Arwinter. There was no doubt everyone in the whole city could hear what these messengers were saying. Everyone was so focused on the messengers in the sky that no one saw the gate open in the courtyard. Nor did they notice an angel stepping out of the gate right into the middle of the courtyard. Everyone was still staring up at the sky dumbfounded when the messengers simply vanished into thin air, and then they heard her. The softest, most beautiful voice any of them had ever heard, but you could hear the superiority and power in the voice nonetheless. I am the exalted Queen of Nazarick, Taylar Olgown. I am here to discuss terms with your emperor. Lead the way to him, she says to the soldiers in the courtyard. Demon Queen of Nazarick fits Albedo perfectly, but I'm not too fond of Angel Queen or Angelic Queen of Nazarick for me. I'll stick with Exalted Queen. Taylar thinks while she is watching the soldiers after her introduction. The soldiers in the courtyard did not lead her to the emperor. Instead, they encircled her and pointed their spears towards her. They were still a good 30 or so feet away, so it wasn't like they could attack her. Their weapons wouldn't do anything to her anyway, but it was the gesture that mattered here. One of the soldiers seemed to be standing in front of the rest, and unlike the others, he had 2 shields with him. She guessed he was the leader of this little band and decided to address him directly. So this is how you welcome an emissary and queen here in the Empire? She asks the very serious-looking man. He doesn't say a word to her. He just bangs his 2 shields together and then slams them into the ground. It kind of looks like he is taking a defensive stance before a fight breaks out. Taylar wants to roll her eyes at these idiots. I mean, can't they see I'm an angel? Do they really think they can hurt or even detain me? Oh well, I gave them their chance, now I'm pissed. She thinks to herself. Very well, I do not take threats lightly. You shall pay for yours. Taylar reaches her hand out, and a black void materializes that she reaches into. The moment her hand starts to disappear, white and blue magic runes start circling around her, spinning at a rapid pace. She draws her hand back out, and it is holding a clear hourglass-shaped vial with a green liquid in it. She looks at the man with 2 shields and sets the range to only include those in the courtyard. Taylar then crushes the hourglass, the magic runes shatter, and she casts her spell. Super tier magic. Damnation. Crimson and black flames erupt on the ground around every soldier in the courtyard. The once stone ground beneath their feet was now nothing but pitch-black darkness. Many of them tried to move from their spots but found their feet rooted to the ground. Just as the panic was about to set in, sheer terror gripped all their hearts. Coming up from out of the darkness were red, scaly arms. The size of the muscles on the arms looked like they could tear someone in half. At the end of the long, slender fingers were black nails that looked more like talons than nails. Everyone in the courtyard and those watching from above all began to tremble. Then, the arms grasped everyone encircled by fire and dragged them down into the darkness. Their screams echoed across the courtyard until they disappeared along with the rings that were in the courtyard. That looked a lot cooler than it did in the game, Taylar thought to herself before looking up at the terrace. She could see the fear in everyone's eyes. She knew they all wanted to run away, but were so scared they couldn't even move. Only Flutter wasn't terrified. It looked as if he had just seen a miracle. Tears were coming down his face, and he looked much like he did the moment he saw their magic power. She finally locked eyes with the Emperor and opened her wings. Taylar jumped off the ground and batted her wings until she was floating just above everyone on the terrace. She wanted them to know she was looking down on them before she continued. "Out of courtesy and protocol, I came to speak with you first," she says as she points to the Emperor. "But since I was greeted with threats, you will wait your turn. There is someone here I would rather speak with first." Taylar flaps her wings and lands on the terrace, where everyone is standing. No one moves a muscle other than to follow where she is walking to. It is so quiet, it doesn't even seem as if anyone is breathing. The only thing to remind them that time is passing is the sound of heels clinking off the ground as Taylar moves. Lena's rock bruise didn't know what today would bring, but what was happening now would have never thought to cross her mind. She had heard plenty of men tell women they looked as beautiful as an angel. It always made her click her tongue in annoyance, since they were always directed at others and never her. She used to receive such words when she was considered beautiful, but this damn curse took all that away from her. She doubts any man present would say that line ever again after seeing how beautiful an angel truly was. Even she couldn't bring herself to be envious of how beautiful this woman, no angel, was. Right now, it was even more difficult for her to do such a thing even if she wanted to. First, she was still incredibly terrified of what she just witnessed this angel do. She had taken care of 200 of the best soldiers in the Empire in seconds without really doing much of anything but casting one spell. Secondly, said angel was walking directly towards her and didn't seem to be looking anywhere but right at her. It was incredibly unnerving, and if what she just said was true, she came here to speak to her really and not the Emperor. She would have normally muttered some prayer to any god to hope it was something good, but she had the thought that maybe God was about to tell her instead. This angel definitely gave off a divine aura, so it wasn't out of the question. "Lena's, I hear you wish for something?" Taylar says to her when she stops just an arm's reach away from her. Why you heard my prayers?" Lena's can't believe someone not only heard her, but came to help. "Can't tell her I heard her doing it through Oriel's scrying window. I have been able to hear Ashran's prayers since I named her my high priestess. Seems like I can use that excuse, so I'm not truly lying that I can hear prayers." Taylar thinks before giving her answer. "I hear those that are not only worthy but offer something worthy in return. You will serve me if I restore your beauty and lift your curse, correct?" "I shall serve you until this body is used up or you have no more use of me. If you can lift my curse, goddess." For the first time, someone on the terrace moved, and it was Lena's falling down on both knees in front of Taylar. Taylar extends her left hand out and puts her fingers against the hair, hiding Lena's curse. She sees her flinch, but Taylar's smile never falters. She brushes the hair out of her face and tucks it behind her ear. Lena's looks like she wants to hide, but Taylar just keeps her smile plastered on her face. She knows a smile might not be enough, so she adds some words of encouragement as well. "You are still beautiful, you know." Once she can see it fully, she understands why Lena's would choose to keep it hidden. It truly is a hideous curse. The untouched side of Lena's face is beautiful. Taylar knows without this curse, she will be quite the catch for anyone. The cursed side, on the other hand, it distorted the symmetry of her face along with adding scabs that seemed to leak a yellow pus. Taylar wanted to do this so that everyone believed it was nothing but her power removing the curse and not a spell she cast. She moved her hand back in front of Lena's bad eye and cast her spell before she started. Silent, remove curse. As soon as she finished, Taylar slowly put her hand against Lena's eye and began to slide her hand across her face. To everyone present, it looked as if she was wiping away her curse with her hand. When Taylar had finished by moving her hand over her ear, Lena's looked the same on both sides of her face. Taylar was certainly right. Lena's was a beauty. Without the curse on her and her hair pulled back from her face, she looked amazing. Lena's lifted her hand up to her face to feel where the curse was. She felt relief the moment this goddess put her hand in front of her eye, but feeling it with her own hand was completely different. Her goddess took her chin and turned it towards the glass doors of the terrace. Have a look, Lena's, Taylar says as she shows Lena's her reflection in the glass. Lena's couldn't help but begin to cry as she saw her reflection. Her curse was indeed gone, and she looked like a normal woman again. The thought of having it gone forever made her want to hug this goddess, or kiss her feet, or something. She wasn't quite sure what the proper response would be. She would serve her loyally for as long as she could. That would be a good start to thank her. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, is all she can really get out at the moment. You deserve it, Lena's. Taylar grabs her shoulders and gets her to stand. Now, I have one more thing to handle before we can depart, Taylar says as she turns towards the Emperor and pulls out a scroll. He wasn't very far away from Lena's to begin with, and she is kind of surprised none of his guards stopped her from getting this close. I probably shouldn't have expected much from the man who sent people to steal from my home, but even you disappointed me. Apparently, you don't teach your soldiers how to act around a foreign queen. She tosses the scroll at him, then continues. Those were the terms I talked my husband into giving you. He wanted to come to lay waste to your entire capital, but I talked him into some pretty favorable terms considering what you did. Now that you have threatened my safety, these terms are void. We shall deliver our final terms on the Katsa Plains. If you do not agree, we will have war. Taylar finishes and starts to turn away from the Emperor. I am sore dashed Jerkniv is cut off before he can really even start. I'm not interested in your apologies. Save it for our next talk. Let's go, Lena's, Taylar says as she turns towards Lena's, opens a gate, to everyone's amazement, and motions Lena's to walk through in front of her. As they disappear into the void of purple and black, the gate does not close for some reason. After just a few moments, something comes back out of the gate and makes a thunk noise as it hits the ground. Everyone looks down to see the armor Lena's was wearing sitting on the ground right as the gate closes. Even now, with that angel gone, no one can figure out what to say, and they all stand there in complete silence at the events that just unfolded. The only noise to be heard is the Emperor unrolling a scroll. Front gate, Riestai's capital. As far as exciting jobs in the Riestai's military, gate duty was actually one of the more exciting ones. You rarely had to draw your weapon or fight at all, but there was always something to do during this shift. The number of people who filed through here on a daily basis was pretty staggering. Today would turn out to be the most exciting one Jerry had ever had. He had the easy job today, making sure everyone stayed in line and made their way forward for inspection when called. He was currently looking down the line to make sure there were no problems when he spotted something drawing closer in the sky down the road. At first, it looked like a bird, and he didn't pay much attention to it, but the longer he looked down the line, the larger it got. By the time he was truly focusing on it, it was only a few hundred feet away, and he could tell it was no bird. The wingspan had to be around 10 feet, but the feathers were jet black. The only bird he had ever seen with feathers that black were ravens, and ravens did not get that big. It wasn't until the being turned his wings over to float towards the ground that he noticed it looked like a man with black wings. He had no idea how to react towards this. His first assumption would be an angel, but angels didn't have black wings, they had white wings. As Ainz touched down at the back of the line, he looked ahead to see how far back he was. There really were a lot of people trying to get in the capital right now. He looked back to where he was standing and noticed the person in front of him hand stepped to the side and just stared at him. The man looked to be in his 30s maybe, and he just stared at Ainz like he was an alien from some other planet. I guess technically that could be considered true, but it was still awkward. He turned back to see if the line had moved and noticed just about everyone was staring at him now. Ainz figured he would get some looks being a heteromorph, but this was a little over the top even by his estimation. He had a feeling Taylar was trying very hard not to laugh her ass off as she watched this. As he started walking forward, everyone seemed to just move out of his way and let him pass. He took advantage of this, so he didn't have to wait in line and slowly made his way towards the front gate. There was not a single person who didn't move out of his way, and he was in front of the line staring at a bunch of guards pretty quickly. "SS state your BB business in the CC capital please," a very nervous guard finally squeaked out of his mouth. "I am the exalted king of Nazarick, Ainz Olgown, and I have come for an audience with King Ramposa III, he tells the ridiculously nervous guys he is talking to. "I CC can't just let you into SSC the KK King," he squeaks out. Well, that might be troublesome. I did make the journey all the way here. What if I could have someone vouch for me who knows both myself and the king? He is a citizen of this country." Ainz asks the man. The guard can't even really comprehend what Ainz is saying. All he knows is someone will vouch for him that knows the king, he will let him in, but not until then for sure. "WWE can send our runner to get this PP person," he says to Ainz. "Oh, no need. I'll bring him," Ainz says. "Oriole, bring him to me." "Yes, father." Gazef Stronov was about to make the last bend into the hallway towards the conference room when all of a sudden he was staring at the front gate and a lot of very nervous-looking guards. Before he could ask what the hell just happened, someone spoke from beside him. "It has been a while, warrior captain." Gazef turns his eyes to the right and sees someone he definitely was not expecting to see today, or ever again really. He was staring into the ruby-red eyes of Ainz Olgown, the master of death he encountered in Karn village. The blood-red tunic, black pants, and white robe he was wearing were in complete contrast to what he was wearing last time he encountered this man. He may have been wearing a mask last time they met, but there was no mistaking those eyes or that aura he could feel. He was still grateful to the man for saving that village, and then his own life. Unfortunately, if he was here, it probably couldn't be anything good. "Master Gown, it is an honor to see you again. You look quite different from the last time I saw you. To what do I owe the honor?" Gazef asks him. "You can thank my queens for the getup." Ainz chuckles. "If I had it my way, I'd never take off my armor. But that is another discussion altogether. I wish to have an audience with your king to discuss a few things, but your guards didn't seem to want to let me in. They seemed to be okay with the idea of someone who knew the king vouching for me before I entered, so I had you brought to me to clear up this misunderstanding." Ainz tells Gazef. "I was unaware you had an audience with the king, or I would have met you when you arrived, Master Gown." Gazef replies. He doesn't remember the king saying anything about an audience with Ainz Olgown any day, let alone today. "I don't have an appointment, but kings are busy, as I'm sure you are aware. I have the time now to discuss what is needed for the future, so I came to speak with him." Ainz turns towards the gate guards. "I assume having the warrior captain vouch for me will allow me entry to your fine city." They all look at Gazef, and he just gives a little nod. "Excellent. I appreciate your vigilance in protecting your capital. Good day, gentlemen," Ainz says and starts walking forward. Gazef follows him on instinct, alone wondering what Master Gown has to say to the king. They only take a few steps before Ainz asks, Would it be all right to walk through town? I noticed the ones at the gate didn't have the greatest reaction to me. Perhaps I should teleport us to the palace, so I don't frighten your people? If you can teleport us both, that would probably be best. Gazef finally says after thinking for a few moments. The next thing he knew, he was right back in the hallway he had just left a moment ago. Considering Master Gown had teleported him and every single one of his soldiers at the same time, he shouldn't be surprised. Master Gown, can you please wait out here while I inform His Majesty you are here to speak with him? Gazef asks Ainz when they get closer to the doors. That's fine as long as you don't have me waiting too long, he replies. Thank you, Master Gown. I shall see to it that it doesn't take long. Gazef says and reaches for the doorknob but stops in his tracks at the sound of Ain's voice. Oh, and Gazef. If you are to introduce me, it is Exalted King of Nazarick, Ainz Gown. I'll spare you all the other titles for a future, more formal meeting, he says with a smile. Oh, of course, Your Highness. Gazef stutters out after the glare that Ainz gave him. Ainz just tries to play it off with a wave and friendly smile, but that murderous look in his eyes never really leaves Gazef's mind. Ainz watched Gazef disappear behind the door and shut it behind him. The reaction to him being on the other side of the door was funny. He heard the silent shock that overtook them, then they essentially had the same conversation they had when Gazef first briefed them on his encounter with Ainz. The nobles were calling Gazef a traitor, Ain's ally, and in league to overthrow the king. Most of the others were ranting about Ainz owing them for living in their country. It was like listening to a rerun since he had watched this conversation with Oriol. After only a few minutes, Gazef reappeared and let him know they were ready to speak with him. Ainz thought on the conversation as the herald announced him to the assembly of nobles. He found it funny that Gazef was the noblest person here, yet he was the one born a commoner. He hoped the king was worth all of Gazef's loyalty, but his silence while he was being accused of all that led Ainz to believe it wasn't going to be so. When he finally caught sight of the king, he understood now. The man was old, and he looked it. He never looked so old in the scrying windows. It seems the man has just lost too many years to ruling and can't do it anymore. Ainz hopes that isn't him someday. Doesn't look like this king has a Taylar or Albedo to keep him on his toes, though. King Ramposa III, it is nice to finally make your acquaintance. Ainz says as he makes it to the front of the throne. He does not bow, kneel, or even twitch. He just stares right at him. You as well, King Ainz Gown. I want to thank you personally for saving our warrior captain, Ramposa says to Ainz. It was no trouble. The warrior captain is the noblest person I've met from your kingdom. Kind of ironic, he was born a commoner, don't you think? Ainz says. The warrior captain indeed has a noble spirit, Ramposa says to Ainz. Enough of our mutual admiration for the warrior captain. I know how little time a king has in a day, so I will make my reason for being here quick. I am here to help you, Ainz states. And how do you plan on doing that? Ramposa asks. Your kingdom is obviously too weak to protect all of its citizens, or I wouldn't have had to step in and save some of your villages while you let others burn. If I had not shown up in Karn and stopped your attackers, the warrior captain would have been late to every village. So, with that being said, Ainz walks back to the wall behind him where there is a large map of the known world. He starts to show them the area he will be claiming as he explains it. Starting where your border is with the Dwarven Kingdom at the Azurlija Mountains and follow that straight south until it reaches the end of your border with the Katsa Plains. Then everything east of that you consider your territory will be mine. It isn't a very big piece of your land, but I believe I'm making a generous concession here, all things considered. You believe taking our land and the city of E-Rantel along with countless farmlands is you being considerate. You're out of your mind if you think we would just give that land to you, monster. Who do you think you are barging in here and demanding such nonsense? You should be thanking us and paying to stay on our land, you ungrateful bastard. Ainz listened to them yell, rant, and rave for a while, waiting for the king to step in and stop them, but he just sat there listening to them all. The man had no fucking spine in Ain's opinion. No wonder this kingdom was falling apart. The king couldn't handle anything on his own, or didn't want to. This realization was both a blessing and a curse. The blessing would be they would never agree to his terms because of all the infighting, and after he demolished them on the Katsa plain, he could install the ruler of his choosing. The curse part would be how big of a pain in the ass it would be to get this country into shape. After they yelled for a bit, and Ainz saw the king do nothing to stop it, he had enough and put an end to it quickly, so he didn't have to listen to these sheep speak anymore. There was no sense in silencing this spell. Ainz wanted them all to know just how much control he had over magic. Silence. Ainz didn't yell his spell, but he said it loud enough that everyone could hear him. He could see the nobles still yelling like little children, but no sound was coming out of their mouths. The king looked downright shocked that he couldn't hear anything coming from their mouths. Don't worry, they will be permitted to speak again when I feel like it. You truly have no control over your country, do you, King Ramposa? You are the king here, so what do you say to my proposal? Ainz asks him. He can see most of the nobles realized they weren't making any noise and just listened. Some, though, were still screaming and making no noise. It was quite amusing. I cannot just give you part of my kingdom. It would make me look weak and vulnerable. Ramposa says to Ainz. First, it is not your country to give away. Ainz reaches into his inventory and pulls out a map that looks exactly like the one on the wall. There are 3 distinct colors on the map. Most of the map is colored in red. The red encompasses the entirety of the Riestai's kingdom, Dwarven Kingdom, Slain Theocracy, Katsa Plains, Baharuth Empire, and the Draconic Kingdom. There is an area that is blue where the Roble Holy Kingdom currently resides, and an area in green where the Argland Council Alliance is currently. He can't read any of the symbols on the map. The king assumes it is some language he cannot read. Judging from what I've learned of your history, this map should be a little over 2,000 years old. Now, the area in red, that is my former kingdom. I turned it over to others so I could spend time in my home, but it appears that no matter how much preparation and guidance I give to rulers, they all have one fatal flaw. They have lifespans. My teachings were lost, forgotten, or just discarded in favor of greed, ambition, and self-gain. The only time they weren't trying to kill each other is when they had to band together to hold off an even bigger threat. When that threat was over, they went right back to killing each other. I see now that I can no longer trust peace to mortals and my queens, and I must oversee it ourselves. Ainz says as he looks at everyone in the room. He wanted the BS that he was well over 2,000 years old to sink in before he continued. Second, and maybe most important, you are weak and vulnerable. The Slain Theocracy's troops walked right into your country and slaughtered your commoners at their leisure until I stepped in. You, King Ramposa, can't even control your court of nobles from fighting like children. You say it will show you are weak to give me back what is mine. I say you are already weak and vulnerable, and you should be grateful I am giving you such a generous offer. So what do you say? Ainz finishes and asks the king. I would like to discuss it amongst ourselves if that is all right with you. Ramposa asks Ainz. I don't see what there is to discuss, but sure. I think 1 minute should be sufficient time to come to an agreement. I'll even drop the silence so you can decide. Ainz snaps his fingers when he finishes, and the one noble who is still yelling could be heard. He stopped immediately when Ainz glared at him, and he almost shit his pants. I don't think 1 minute dash. 55 seconds, 54, 53, 52. Ainz starts counting down to interrupt the nonsense that the king was about to say. There should be no debate. His offer is more than generous considering what he did for this kingdom. The entire time he is counting, he just hears them bickering and some downright insulting him. Killing them would be too easy, but he knew these nobles would be on the battlefield when it came to that, so he could wait and revel in their downfall instead of ending it quickly during a friendly talk. All right, time is up. What is your decision? Ainz asks. We cannot come to an agreement between ourselves if we had some more time, maybe dash. I told you you had a minute. It boggles my mind why you are unwilling to accept such a deal, but that is your decision. Very well then, this scroll is for you. Ainz says as he reaches into his robe and pulls out a scroll before throwing it to the king. What does it say? Ramposa asks. I simply wish for you to remember how generous I was when I came here. I will bring my final offer to you on the Katsa Plains. It will not be nearly as generous as this one. If you refuse my new offer, I will declare war and take back everything that is mine. Ainz says. Before anyone can even respond, he disappears from the room. Everyone in the room started to yell, different emotions coming from each of them: panic, hate, rage, and in the case of Gazef Stronov, dread. Nazarick Cherry Blossom Sanctuary. A week later, Ainz stood on the raised dais set up between the rows of sakura trees on the 8th floor of Nazarick. He had no idea why, but he was incredibly nervous. It didn't make sense to him, but that was what he was feeling at this moment. He had no reason to be nervous. He didn't believe for a moment Taylar or Albedo wouldn't show up, but the feeling was with him nonetheless. He wondered if every man who was about to get married felt like this. He wasn't just nervous, though, he was also excited. If he was being honest with himself, he was happy to be marrying both of them. He knew a ceremony wasn't necessary, but it would be a good way for everyone in Nazarick to celebrate. He'd be lying if he didn't admit he wanted to see both Taylar and Albedo in a wedding dress. He had no idea what their dresses looked like. Albedo had made them for herself and Taylar, and Ainz wasn't allowed to see them. It was fine with him that he couldn't see them. He would be laying eyes on them soon anyway. It seemed rather fitting also, since they were combining different wedding ceremonies and making one that was unique to them. They would be in traditional Western wedding attire, and they would be exchanging rings. But they were also going to drink sake from 3 sacred vessels and not partake in gift exchanging like a traditional Japanese wedding. There would be no exchanging of vows, though. Well, there would be, but not in the traditional wedding sense. This part was going to be completely unique to them, as really only Ainz was swearing a vow. Ainz supposed it wasn't a vow, Peresi. It was more like an oath, I guess would be a better word. While he would do the majority of the talking, all 3 of them would be taking it, and they had their parts as well, so it wasn't like Ainz just rambling up there by himself. Ainz was also already in the Cherry Blossom Sanctuary greeting those that were arriving for the ceremony. He couldn't remember if this was a tradition from some culture, but if not, this would be unique for them also. He watched as everyone continued to enter, give him a bow, then walk to where they were going to stand. They had to tell everyone 3 times not to kneel when they entered. It would have taken too damn long if everyone did it as they entered. There weren't any surprises in the groups as they filed in. Everyone came as he pretty much expected. The groups of homunculi maids were grouped almost as they had them for their training. It made sense they would get closer sharing the same schedule and training. It almost looked like a high school lunchroom with the groups gathering together. The one difference, it seemed, was everyone was getting along great. There was one group of maids who seemed more popular than the others, but Ainz knew the reason for that. That was the group of maids who were the first to take levels in a class other than maid. Ironically, or maybe it was fate or destiny, Sixis the maid, who was another likeness of Taylar from a different game she voiced, was not only in this group, but also had chosen to become a Miko priestess as her class. Ainz had the feeling her choice of class would finally get one of the guardians to guess right in their game with Taylar. Only Mare had tried so far, and he did not guess Sixis. The first pairing that made him want to laugh was Lupusregina and Nemu. While he knew why they were together today, it was still fun watching a sadistic werewolf happily chat with a 10-year-old human. Solution even seemed to join the conversation, and it made the scene all that more bizarre. A werewolf, a slime, and a human, that sounded like the start of a terrible joke to Ainz. Seeing Enri and Peter together was a sight. It seemed Taylar's plan was working, and rather quickly. Peter was wearing black boots and trousers with a black, red, and white tunic. The Swords of Darkness had proclaimed those as the colors of Nazarick due to Ain's black armor, Taylar's red dress, and Albedo's white dress. It was pretty sound logic, so he rolled with it. The dress Enri was wearing was quite nice and looked great on her. It was a darker blue color, very similar to the one she wore to dinner. The difference was that it was not lace. Her arms and shoulders were bare, the top was secured around her neck, and it flowed down almost to the floor. There was a V cut down towards her cleavage, but it was narrow enough to show off next to nothing. There seemed to be jewels in the chest portion of her dress, but once the dress went down past her chest, it was smooth as velvet the rest of the way down. It hugged her curves pretty tight until it reached the bottom of her hips, then flowed down for easy movement. There was a slit that went up past mid-thigh, but it was a little daring on Enri's part. It wasn't that it was super high, it was the position. Instead of the side like a normal one would be, this one was more center-left. It showed off quite the amount of leg when she stepped with her left leg. As the rest made their way into the cherry blossom sanctuary, Ainz was starting to get a little impatient. He should have realized inviting just about all of Nazarick would mean an incredibly long line of people. He was simply waiting for the last group to come in so he would know it was time to start. Finally, after what felt like an eternity to Ainz, Oriole, Claire, Albedo, and Enri made their way to the 8th floor, and Ainz knew it was finally time to start. He greeted all 4 of them, and Ainz and Oriole made their way to the dais to wait for Taylar and Albedo to come through. It didn't take long for Ainz to sense the gate open on the other side of the doors. Ukonomatamas and Oathoshis, Oriole's guards, must have sensed it as well, and they opened the doors to the sanctuary. When Ainz laid eyes on what was beyond the door, his eyes went wide and he froze. It seemed time ceased to exist at that moment for him. He wasn't even sure if his heart was beating or if he was breathing. He was acutely aware of the otherworldly like beauty Taylar and Albedo possessed. He knew every inch of them by now. As most husbands would know every birthmark and imperfection of their wife, Taylar and Albedo had no such marks. Both of them were pure perfection, but they somehow seemed even more beautiful than he ever thought possible. Ainz knew Albedo would make beautiful dresses, and judging from what they wore normally, they would be a lot sexier looking than most wedding dresses are. That still didn't prepare him for what he saw as Taylar and Albedo walked towards him. Taylar had her right arm linked with Albedo's left as they made their way towards Ainz. They both had a bouquet of flowers they were holding in front of them. Taylar's was made of white and red roses, while Albedo's was made of crimson and black. They didn't follow any tradition when it came to makeup, for Taylar and Albedo needed none. Ainz didn't want them painted up like a geisha, as some Japanese traditions do. He didn't even want makeup as part of it, period. Claire obviously would have loved to do it, but his queens needed nothing to enhance their appearance. Seeing them completely natural would be a much lovelier sight than some paint on their faces. He did notice Taylar and Albedo both had their nails painted. He certainly didn't mind that. Ainz's eyes took in Taylar from her wavy, golden hair, all the way down to her white painted toenails and silver, jewel-studded heels. The dress she was wearing made Ainz's mind go blank. Taylar's dress had an intricately woven lace pattern that barely covered Taylar's chest. The design looked like a mixture of roses and snowflakes to Ainz. Once the pattern reached barely below her breasts, there were a few snowflakes and a single rose that linked the top of the dress with the bottom, but absolutely nothing else. The same design wasn't present again until where Taylar's belly button would be. The pattern covered up a little more than it needed to, then it completely stopped when it reached near the side of her hip. Her flesh was completely exposed for a few inches, then the pattern ran up the side of her hip and legs. It reached about halfway up her upper body and halfway down her thighs. Most of her skin was still exposed other than the lace patterns woven into the dress. Once the dress reached her mid-thigh, the white, see-through fabric that wasn't present above that flowed out from her body with the design woven into the new fabric. If Ainz had a guess, he would say that only about 25% of Taylar's body truly had clothing. He wondered if the design of the dress would make it easier or hard to get off. He certainly didn't see any zippers, clasps, or things of such nature. I can't wait till later, so I can find out. Ainz thinks to himself as he turns to take an Albedo. Ainz was dumbstruck by Albedo's dress as well, and honestly, couldn't believe hers covered up a significantly larger portion of her body than Taylar's did. It was still heart-stopping as Ainz took it in. The upper portion of her dress seemed to be made entirely of lace and absolutely nothing else. It seemed Albedo created a corset made of nothing but lace to him. It was tight against her perfect skin and seemed to have a number of geometrical designs in it. It had 2 straps that came up around her shoulders, also made of lace, that wrapped around the base of her neck to hold it in place, while a lace pattern trailed down towards her cleavage, almost making the top half look like a heart. At the bottom of the corset-like top was a small lace trail that connected to the bottom portion. The area of Albedo's dress around her hips looked like lace boy's short panties if Ainz was being honest. The upper portion of Albedo's dress almost looked like lingerie to Ainz. Around Albedo's mid-thigh, lace flowed out from her body to form a train just like Taylar's had. It seemed this is where Albedo had put her rose designs in her dress. With how perfect the lace laid against both of their bodies and complete lack of any kind of fabric other than that on their upper bodies, Ainz had to wonder if everything above both of their mid-thighs wasn't simply painted on, and the only real fabric part of their dresses was from mid-thigh down. They made their way to him, and Ainz didn't see anyone else's reaction to Taylar and Albedo. It was like he had tunnel vision, and nothing else existed at that moment. He could not take in anything around him that was not these two at the moment. When they finally had made their way to him, he continued to stare and just wanted to scoop them both up and run back to their room. He heard Taylar and Albedo giggle at him, and it broke him out of his own little bubble he had created for a little while. "Perhaps we should get started," Taylar says just above a whisper to him. The beautiful smile did nothing to hide the mischievous look she gave him. Ainz realized he had been just staring at them and had done nothing. He must have looked awfully ridiculous, like a teenage boy who had never seen a beautiful woman before. They unlinked their arms, and Ainz took each of them by the hand and led them to the top of the dais where Oriole waited for them. They each took a side of the small table and got down on their knees. Ainz was in the center with his back to the crowd. Taylar was kneeling to his left and Albedo on his right. Oriole was standing directly in front of Ainz with a golden pitcher in her hand that kind of resembled a genie lamp. Oriole began to pour the liquid into the 3 sacred vessels that were resting on top of the table. Once the vessels were filled, each of them took one in hand. At the same time, they each took 3 sips of the liquid and handed their vessel to the one on their left. When they had all finally taken 3 sips of each vessel, all 3 stood and turned towards the crowd. Ainz was in the center, and now Taylar was on his right, and Albedo on his left since they had turned around. Taylar and Albedo both took a small step forward and turned to face each other with Ainz in the center still. Ainz reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 platinum bands. They looked rather plain from what anyone could tell, just simple platinum bands. Ainz held both up in between his thumb and pointer finger before he spoke. "Let these rings remind you both of my love and devotion, the place you each hold in my heart, and that we are always bound together." Ainz does not slip the ring on each of their fingers to take its place with their engagement rings. Instead, he touches the top of each band to the bottom of the rings they are currently wearing. The platinum bands seem to break apart at the bottom and wrap itself around the rings Taylar and Albedo are already wearing. When it is done, instead of a solid, plain, platinum band that everyone saw, the band around Taylar and Albedo's current rings transformed. The jewels, claws, and stones stayed the same, but the band was now fashioned in the likeness of twisting vines adorned with roses. Taylar and Albedo can't help but admire the new addition to their fingers and lose themselves staring at them for a few seconds. The next part of the ceremony was going to be a surprise for them. Ainz had told them nothing of what he was about to do, and it showed on their faces when he asked them to kneel. Taylar and Albedo complied but looked at each other in confusion as to what was about to happen. Neither of them saw Albedo or Lupusregina coming from behind them holding on to 2 wooden boxes until they were standing in between both of them. When Taylar and Albedo saw Albedo and Lupusregina standing beside them and opened the boxes, they both took a look at what was inside. Neither of them could stop their eyes from widening or the gasp that left both of their mouths. Sitting inside each box was a crown made of prismatic ore. The band around each crown looked just like the one that now adorned their rings. The band was made of twisted, interlocking vines with roses meticulously carved into them. Rising up from the band were 7 snakes. Each snake held a jewel in their mouths. The jewels and snakes looked exactly like the top of the staff of Ainz' old gown, but there was an addition to each of their crowns. In the center of them was an almost lifelike carving, each one specific to its recipient. Taylor's crown had an angel on it with its wings and arms spread out wide with a small jewel, identical to the one in her ring, where its heart was. Albedo's crown had a demoness in the center with her wings and arms spread wide with a small jewel, identical to her ring, where its heart would be. Ainz grabbed the crown that Lupusregina was holding out of the box and turned slightly towards Taylar. She took a moment to look at Ainz as he held the crown over her head and saw the loving smile that he was giving her right now. It made her heart flutter, and she couldn't wait for this to be over so they could retire to their chambers for the night. It made her return the smile instantly before Ainz' voice could be heard by all. I, Ainz Olgown, hereby crown you, Taylar Olgown, exalted Queen of Nazarick, protector, guide, and mother of our people from now until the end of time. Ainz lowered the crown onto Taylar's head, and it fit to perfection. Even while she was kneeling, she looked to be the queen of everything, not just Nazarick. It took every ounce of his willpower to turn away from her ethereal visage to crown Albedo. Ainz took the crown from the box Albedo was holding and turned to Albedo. She looked up just as Taylar did, and Ainz could see the tears already building in her eyes. She also returned the smile that was on Ainz' lips before he continued. I, Ainz Olgown, hereby crown you, Albedo Olgown, demon queen of Nazarick, protector, guide, and mother of our people from now until the end of time. Taylar and Albedo had both informed him that they would like to be known as Taylar and Albedo Suzuki, and he had agreed, but they also agreed that in front of Nazarick and the world, they would take the name of the guild. Only Taylar and Albedo knew him as Suzuki Satoru, and no one else in Nazarick, at least not yet. That would change very soon. They would be Taylar Suzuki and Albedo Suzuki in the privacy of their chambers, but Taylar Olgown and Albedo Olgown to everyone else. Ainz had honestly almost cried when they told him they wanted their last names to be his from Earth. He couldn't deny that he wanted the same, and when they told him their wishes, he could barely hold it together. They made the compromise with the last name, since they had taken liberties with the titles given to them as the Queens of Nazarick. When the Guardians, Pleiades, and the rest of Nazarick had insisted they simply couldn't just call them king and queen since they were above such rulers in this world, they had all brainstormed ideas on what to call them. After a few funny ones, and some that only fit 1 or 2 of them, they had agreed to exalted king and queen. They took to calling Taylar Angel Queen or Angelic Queen of Nazarick and Albedo as Demon Queen of Nazarick. Taylar wasn't very excited about the new name, so she stuck with Exalted Queen of Nazarick while Albedo had taken to her new title rather well. Ainz supposed it did fit her perfectly, and he had started calling her that before the denizens of Nazarick ever had, so he had no complaints about it. Rise, my queens, and take your oaths as equal rulers of Nazarick and this world. Taylar and Albedo both stand and turn slightly to face Ainz better. Oriole made her way down the dais and stood beside her father as she passed him the staff of Ainz Olgown. Ainz took it in his right hand and held it out in front of him between Taylar and Albedo. Each of them grabbed the staff with their left hand, so their rings were in contact with the staff. As they each grasped the staff with Ainz, he started the final part of the ceremony to make them equal in all things. I, Ainz Olgown Momonga and Suzuki Satoru, hereby swear that you both shall be my equal in all things. Our power, our hearts, our minds, our lives, and our souls shall be bound together for eternity. This I swear to both of you before our people. From this day until the end of our days. Ainz, Taylar, and Albedo all finish at the same time. When Ainz finished his oath, he released his power into the staff, and everyone but Taylar and Albedo were forced to take a knee. It did not feel like an overwhelming force pushing them down on their knees. No, It felt as if that was the right thing for them to do when his power hit them and covered them like a comforting blanket on a cold winter night. As soon as the feeling washed over everyone, Taylar and Albedo released their power into the staff to bind it to Ainz. When their power reached those in attendance, it felt like new layers of protection to all of them. No one could discern one power from the next after just a few moments, and it seemed as though their power was now truly mixed together for all time. Those in the crowd had never seen anything like this before. It truly seemed as if they had somehow become one supreme entity to everyone there. Those created in Nazarick just took this as another sign of the true power of the rulers of Nazarick. Those not from Nazarick, like Enri, Swear, Lena's, and the Swords of Darkness, just stared with their jaws almost on the floor. To think that one being, let alone three, could possess that much power and weave it together for the protection of their people was something most of them didn't think possible or ever thought any ruler would do. They all had this thought as everyone began to stand again. Ainz released his hold on the staff, but Taylar and Albedo did not. Ainz took his hand and put it against Taylar's cheek to turn her towards him. He bent down and gave her a chaste kiss on the lips. Ainz released Taylar and turned towards Albedo. He did the same exact thing to her, then they both released the staff. It hovers in front of all three of them as Oriel steps forward to address all those in attendance. All hail the exalted rulers of Nazarick. Oriel shouts to the crowd as everyone bends the knee once more and bows their heads to the monarchs. Even Oriel joined them, as much as Ainz did not want her to do that. His daughter should kneel to no one, not even her parents. Ainz takes Taylar and Albedo's hands, and they start making their way down the dais towards the walkway between the crowd. The staff moves with them just a few feet in front of the three of them as they walk forward. As they pass each row, those in attendance rise as they are walked past. Once Ainz, Taylar, and Albedo make it to the end and everyone is standing once more, a gate opens in front of them and they proceed through it. The gate does not close, and soon everyone is filing through the gate behind Oriel, who was the first one through the gate after the king and queens. The rulers of Nazarick wait on the other side, much like a congratulations line you would see in a Western wedding after the ceremony. It took a while for everyone to give their congratulations, but they were grateful for everyone coming and stuck it out until the end. Once everyone had made it through, the gate closed behind them and the wedding reception began. Based on the atmosphere of the party, no one in Nazarick would get very much rest that night.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.